Copyright disclaimer under the Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
How you doing, bro? I was hoping you'd come back, man. Your favorite, you said?
Yeah.
Oh man, you're gonna hurt a lot of people's feelings now, man.
Who?
Muhammad Hijab's gonna be sad because you just.
Is it? Shake? What?
You're finished. You're finished. You're finished.
Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Moderator, our distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, our friends and our enemies.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam Rasulullah wa ba'd. In the name of Allah, and the peace and blessings of Allah be upon His last final messenger. As to what follows, family, friends, foes, haters, and hatettes, welcome back to the features. I greet you all in peace and love with no hatred in my heart. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And the peace and blessings of Allah be upon all of you. And before we begin, hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the share button, and hit me up on Patreon. As you know, we got a lot of haters up in here. Now, we got a special treat today. I am going to be doing my reaction, play-by-play commentary on a debate that happened recently between Sheikh Uthman Farooq and David Wood. David Wood returned to Sheikh Uthman's dawah booth, and they got into this debate about slavery, which just happens to be right up my alley. You know, I've been talking about these black issues all the time. Right, so let's get right into it.
Not on the essentials.
All right, so I have a quick question for you before we start. I know, relax, bro. But last time you came, you had brought Ibn Kathir and stuff, and I actually went home and looked up. You had just mentioned a part. Actually, that wasn't even Ibn Kathir's opinion, but we'll get into that some other time because you don't have your book and I don't have mine. But I do have a question. So, I got a book that you are much more familiar with than I am, right?
MacArthur Study Bible.
MacArthur, you're not familiar with it?
I've heard of it. I don't. Yeah, and I have a copy of the MacArthur Study.
Oh, you
Bible,
have it?
But it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not.
So I was trying to.
Wait, are you actually? I'm sitting here. Let's.
I know, bro. Look, you asked your questions last time. I answered. I had a question waiting for you from the last conversation.
When I came up to you last time, I said I have a question about this. Then I wanted to get one out of the way quick.
Okay, so.
And then it took us forever.
But last time you brought a different pamphlet.
No, I
right?
said when I came, I said I have a question about this one.
Okay.
And then I said, but here's a quick question.
All right,
and I asked a quick question about that, and then we spent the entire time on that.
So you brought up a different question, right? You brought it up. I didn't bring up that pamphlet last time, right?
Yeah, this is.
But I have a question related to that one, so we gotta finish one before we jump because you want to jump away from it.
Yeah, but this is why I came.
I appreciate that.
Booth, right?
No, this is a dawah booth.
You're handing out tracts.
Yes.
You're handing out tracts.
Yes.
I had some questions. I don't even really want to criticize terribly. I just want to clarify what the Quran is saying about these scientific issues.
No problem.
Some of the times it doesn't sound like that's what the Quran is saying to me.
Gotcha.
But you know the Arabic, and so you can break it down.
No problem. So
can we hold off on that till
let me tell you. So David, you came out last time and you brought up a question from a pamphlet, right? And when you open up a question, then when I have a question for you, I would appreciate if we have a conversation, right? You can't be like, okay, I'm going to bring up this stuff, but if you have a question, we're not going to address it until I'm done with all of mine. So this is related to the same one you brought up about scholars and their explanation, and you said, especially because you know our timing, and when I had to go, you were having your personal conversation with your camera talking about, you know, a Christian can just pick up a study and you know accept what's in there and so on, but a Muslim, he's trying to throw scholars under the bus. And you know, and you guys should know, I wasn't throwing Ibn Kathir under the bus. I love Ibn Kathir. You didn't even understand what Ibn Kathir, because I was telling you it was already time for me. This is not my, this is why we got to clarify this, right? Because this is not my job. This is your job. It's not my job. I don't get paid. I don't have a Patreon. I don't have supporters that pay me.
You got those Hamas bucks coming in, though, right?
There what?
You got those Hamas bucks.
I have
right?
no money coming from Hamas.
No Hamas bucks.
No Hamas bucks. Okay. Yeah. I don't even agree with Hamas's methodology. Just to be clear, right? But you do have a Patreon account that pays your bills, right?
By the way, I said as we were walking over here, I said, hey, we're going to have some questions about this. We can do the dawah, but I think he's going to sidetrack onto a bunch of other issues before we ever get here.
I'm not. I'm going to make...
Let me explain what's going on here. Essentially, last time that David Wood was there, you know, they went back and forth, you know, like they do, right? And David Wood brought up something about Ibn Kathir, right? So, anyways, I want to go back a minute so I can show you something about David Wood's body language and how it's related to what he's doing. Because you got to understand, I'm glad that Sheikh Uthman brought this up, that David Wood right now, he's on the clock. He's working, right? And next week, inshallah, I'm going to show you guys some shocking video from an interview I did with the brother C.L. Edwards, where he actually exposes the apologetic inside money schemes and how they get their money. And there is actually Zionist money behind these apologetics, including David Wood. He gets money from Zionists to do what he does. You understand? The only reason why he's coming back and forth to Sheikh Uthman's booth is to get material to put on his YouTube so that he can get paid. You feel me? But let's go back a little bit.
But I do have a question. So, I got a book that you are much more familiar with than I am, right? MacArthur. You're not familiar with it?
Now you see when he said I had a question, and David Wood didn't react at all, right? He was like calm or whatever, right? But when he picks up the book, look what happens.
I've heard of it. I don't. Yeah, and I have a copy of the MacArthur study.
You have it.
But it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not.
So I was trying to.
Wait, are you actually? I'm sitting here. Listen.
I know, bro. Look.
You see that? Did you see that? When he opened the book, all of a sudden, he goes back to the pamphlet. Why is this important? He's there with the pamphlet only to bring material back to his YouTube channel. That's it. He doesn't have any sincere questions at all because he's not trying to learn anything. You understand? This is his job. And Sheikh Uthman, because of his experience, he understands that this is David Wood's job. He kept him right back on this question because he knows that if he doesn't get to this question, then David Wood can extend this argument as long as he wants about that pamphlet, and he'll never get to that question. So he has to push the issue about this question in this book so that he can actually ask his question. Right now, they go back and forth like this for some minutes. So we'll skip through all that, and then we'll get right to the part where they move along.
Yep.
So I'm sitting here taking the materials you're handing out.
Great.
Asking a scholar,
sure,
which is what you told me to do. And
good.
As soon as I come ready to ask a scholar,
right,
so I have a question for you on something that we weren't talking about.
The reason is because you're not listening to what the question is, afraid of it maybe, but this is related.
No.
Okay.
Concerned about not getting to this.
I have told you we will get to this today, inshallah. Okay?
Well, why can't we do this?
Because this is.
You see, all he's trying to do is get a gotcha moment with this flyer. And that's why he came down to see Sheikh Uthman to begin with. You know, looking through his material to see what he can use to put on his YouTube. So now Sheikh Uthman want to ask him a question, he's dancing.
Related to the earlier conversation, you're not even listening to what the question is, and I don't want to jump from one conversation to the next without finishing a conversation.
Okay, can we set a time limit on this?
Sure.
Do it rapid fire.
Let's do half an hour.
No, half an hour.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. 10
okay,
minutes.
10 minutes. So last time you said that a Christian...
Okay.
What? I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
All right. So, last time you said that a Christian could just pick up a study book and then he could take it and he wouldn't have to go to a living scholar or ask for any of the explanations. So I actually have a MacArthur study Bible, and I was looking about slavery. and I was looking at the issue of copyist errors. And the MacArthur Bible tells us that there are copyist errors in the Bible, right? The MacArthur Bible tells us that at a time God allowed slaves to be beaten. So would you agree that that's correct? That do you think God allowed that you can beat a slave and as long as they live a day, it's okay, that's their property?
That passage isn't, if you're talking about the verse you brought up last time,
right?
That verse isn't actually about what you think it is.
It's not about slave beating?
That verse is about punishing for capital, that verse is about judging intent for capital punishment.
Interesting.
Right?
Is it?
Yes.
So let's bring it up. This is to do with capital punishment or disciplining your slave?
No, this is Leviticus.
It is not Leviticus. David Wood. It's Exodus. Okay?
Okay.
You with me? Or you? See, this is why you didn't want me to ask the question, right? This is why. This is why. All right. Exodus 21, 2021. Read the verse for us, Mr. Wood.
2021.
Yeah. Read it out loud.
Notwithstanding, if he remains alive a day or two, he shall not be punished, for he is his property.
Keep going.
If men fight,
Okay, I'm sorry. 20 and 21. You didn't read the
and
first
if a
one.
man beats his male or female servant with a rod so that he dies under his hand, he shall surely be punished. Notwithstanding, if he remains alive a day or two, he shall not be punished, for he is his property.
So you, David Wood, believe that God, Jesus, allowed that if a person beats their slave, and as long as his beating is severe enough that he dies a day later, you cannot punish the man because a human being is another human's property that he can kill, just letting him live a day.
Okay, so there's a couple of things going on here, right? First of all, the Sheikh mentioned that in the MacArthur Study Bible, that even in the Study Bible itself, it mentions that there are copious errors in the Bible, meaning a lot of errors in the Bible. And he mentioned this part. Now, David Wood, he agreed to doing a 10-minute segment on this one question, and it could have been even shorter than that if he had just answered the question directly, right? The Sheikh started with the copious errors mentioned in the MacArthur Study Bible. Why? Because if you agree with that, then you have essentially agreed that there are actually errors. And if you don't agree with that, then you're saying that you agree with this particular verse that the Sheikh mentioned, that you believe that it's okay for somebody to beat his male or female slave with a rod. If he remains alive for 2 days, he shouldn't be punished. That's his line of questioning here. But as usual, and as I mentioned before in the last videos, Christians will change their beliefs and even make up beliefs right there in front of you. Now watch what David Wood says.
A couple issues.
Go ahead.
One, the position of Christians, according to the New Testament, is that that God did allow things in the past that he didn't approve of, they didn't think are good, but because of the hardness of our hearts, he allowed us to do them. Right?
Wow.
Whether or not this is true, this could be the case, but when it comes to slavery, this is a lie. This is a lie. And I repeat, it's a lie. And I'm going to show you why. First of all, we can take what Jesus himself says according to the Bible, and Jesus himself refutes this statement. And it's a well-known statement in the Bible. And these Christians, they know it very well because, we use it a lot against them, right? But anyways, it's Jesus' statement, "Don't misunderstand why I have come. I did not come to abolish the law of Moses or the writings of the prophets. No, I came to accomplish their purpose." So if we just take that, that would be enough. But the majority of the times, when it comes, especially these apologetic types, when you quote this stuff to them, they'll come up with all kinds of excuses. So let's look into the practical application of the New Testament. You see, here's the thing. There's a exodus, so to speak, of black people leaving Christianity nowadays because they're learning more and more about the involvement of the church and the use of the Bible in order to promote slavery. Are you understanding me? And it's verses like this that the Sheikh mentioned, that if he remains alive a day or two, he shall not be punished, for he's his property, that the church actually used 500 years ago in order to keep the slavery gravy train going. Not to mention other verses, but we'll get to that later. But why am I mentioning this? It's because the church used the Old Testament verses in order to promote slavery, but guess what they were using in America, in the Caribbean, and in South America? They were using the New Testament. What do you mean, Bilal? Like this one from Ephesians 6, 5-8. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear, and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. Obey them not only to win their favor in their eye is on you, but as slaves to Christ, doing the will of God from your heart. And this one from Colossians 3:22-24. Bondservants, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service as people pleasers, but with sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. Or like this one, 1 Timothy 6, 1-2. Let all who are under a yoke as bondservants regard their own masters as worthy of all honor, so that the name of God and the teaching may not be reviled. And there are other verses just like this in the New Testament. Now, the church and Christians and the history behind the church and the Christians, white Christians from Europe, that is, using the Bible not only to justify slavery, but to endorse and finance slavery, is so well documented that it is mind-boggling that David Wood will come up with this asinine argument with the Old Testament and versus New Testament at this time. The Catholic Church used many Old Testament verses, like the curse of Ham, the slavery verse that the Sheikh just mentioned, so many, to justify kidnapping free Africans and forcing them into bondage because they had a cursed seed of Canaan and they weren't human and they were 3/5 of a man and all kinds of stuff, and saying that God has ordained this institution in the Bible because those people were black people. And then when the same Europeans reached the West, it didn't make a difference. We know about the American history mostly because that's the best documented. But wherever you find black Christians in the West, it's because white Christians forced those black Christians to be Christians to begin with through slavery. Are you understanding me? And they used New Testament verses like the ones I just mentioned in order to force black people into slavery. And there's no doubt that David Wood knows this. How do you know, Bilal? Look at this. Muhammad, the white prophet with black slaves. Look at this one. Muhammad gets caught with this slave girl. Look at this one. The Islamic view of black slaves, Islam and slavery in the Hadith. Now, why is David Wood covering these topics? It's because of the embarrassment that Christians are facing and the scrutiny, incredible scrutiny for their participation, involvement, and complicity in the transatlantic slave trade, which black people are feeling the effects of up until this very day. So now he's projecting upon the Muslims, and this is a common thing with apologetics. Any wicked, evil thing that the church has done, they try to project that same thing onto the Muslims. So because Westerners don't understand, and even a lot of Muslims don't understand Islamic history, they're trying to equate this devilish, white supremacist, Christian-backed, European-funded slave trade against black Africans and try to make that an Islamic thing, and it's just not. It's just, I'm sorry, it's not. Slavery has existed long before the transatlantic slave trade. Many civilizations use slavery and the dehumanization of other human beings in order to use free labor to set up their empires, including Muslims. Including Muslims and Islamic empires, they did the same thing. And nobody's denying that. But what's the difference? The difference is, was the Quran or the Sunnah ever used explicitly for this purpose? See, what you have is a bunch of theory when you throw, these titles, Islamic view on black slaves. This is a bunch of theory. It's not practical application. What we have in the hadith is the Prophet ﷺ saying that there's no superiority over the Arab, over the non-Arab, or the white over the black. But superiority comes over through the fear of Allah. These are the hadith that we have. When you have devil Arabs and devil Turks who involved themselves in this thing, that's not because Islam said it. It's because of their own wicked desires. And it's different with the church because the church explicitly used the Bible to justify the kidnapping of free human beings and taking 100% of their time, labor, and bodies, including their children, and calling them chattel and using them as property and doing whatever they wished with them and treating them worse even than the worst animals. Not even their dogs got treated like these human beings. That's what the Bible did. That's a big difference. So we as Muslims can openly say that what's going on in Libya with those devils and Africans, or these Arab countries when they kidnap black Africans and enslave them, we can call them devils outright. And we can say that they have nothing to do with Islam outright. And we have more than enough proof to say that. Can you say the same? What you have is theory versus us. What we have against you is practical application. Just a couple of weeks ago in Canada, they discovered over 750 bodies of indigenous people underneath churches in residential schools. That's practical application. That's real life usage of the Bible to usurp the rights of human beings and turn them nothing more than bond animals. Completely different. So when you are talking about, it's amazing how even though the church used the Old Testament to make an argument for slavery, and the the churches in the West used the New Testament in order to keep the slaves, you're coming out here talking about, the things in the New Testament abrogate the things in the Old Testament, and you're using it for slavery. And even if that was the case, it can never be used for the case of slavery, as we already mentioned, because they were already using those verses in the Bible. Just like they used the Bible to enslave black Africans, just like they used the Bible to force indigenous people in the West into Catholicism and send them to residential schools so they can civilize the savages, just like they used the Bible to go into Africa And, you know, as I can't remember who it was, one of these African presidents said, when the white man came to Africa, they came with their Bibles, and we had the lands. And when they left, they had the lands, and we had the Bibles. That's what you guys did. And that's why black people are leaving Christianity in droves, because we're finding out about this history. And you can't reverse this. It's written in stone. This stuff happened. There's no coming back from it. You're talking about New Testament what? Give me a break, man.